Hi, I'm Alex. Today, I'm going to be talking about why I choose to write fantasy. Fantasy romance most of the time, but mostly fantasy. So, for me, and I'm sure a lot of people, I grew up on fantasy stories. That's pretty much the genre that the people around me read. It was the movies we watched, it was pretty much what I grew up with. Fairly early on in my teen years, I was introduced to romance. Again, something very commonly read in my household and readily available to me. So it made up a large chunk of what I was reading. And part of the reason between fantasy and romance, that I was reading so much of it besides it was available, was that it was just fun to read. I had teachers who had encouraged me to read more realism. I can actually remember there was two books that I was coerced is a little strong of a word, but my teachers highly suggested I read, that were pretty much the exact same book about a teenager, that 17 range, that got into a car accident, lost her leg, and then went through the whole thing. I'm not kidding when they were two completely different books with the exact same plot. I don't know if it was the same writer and they just had like the same story they were recycling. I don't know. But I hated reading these. Like, I couldn't, for the life of me. I was like, you know what? I got about halfway through and was like, can someone find me the Cliff Notes? Because I don't want to read any more of this thing. Please. And then they were like, okay, you read one. You can go back to what you're normally reading. I find not even nonfiction, but regular fiction to just be very dry, very dull. It's not something I enjoy. The other reason I enjoy fantasy is that it can explore a lot of really deep topics, or even going as far as dark topics, without really strangling you with them. And I think you see that a lot more nowadays in like movies and stuff, where it's like, okay, we get it. You're trying to make a point. Please stop hitting us over the head with it. Fantasy allows you to explore a lot of those sort of topics, but in a way that you're just more comfortable in general reading about it. And not to say that some authors don't hit you overhead with the idea repeatedly. I've read a few of those and just... it gets a bit much when it's not done well. No denying that. But it's easier to approach those topics when there's that cushion, if you will, of, hey, let's make magic represent this, or let's make shapeshifters represent this. Another reason I enjoy writing fantasy is because, especially when you're creating a world from scratch, and what I mean is you're not necessarily doing the well, no, I guess in a way you're always playing with the stereotypes of, dragons or whatever. But when you're building a world up from square one, there's a lot of unknown factors in a fantasy realm. There could be languages or, just literally everything is an unknown. And for me, that's a lot of fun to explore and kind of see where it goes. Because while you may have a notion of what you want things to be like, it's actually pretty easy for that to suddenly just go, poof, this is something else entirely now. Congratulations, you need to do something new. And you're just like, oh, that's different. Okay, let's see where this goes. So it's really fun to explore that ever shifting sort of world that comes up from writing it. Another reason I write in fantasy, and it's probably not the best reason, but it's my comfort zone. I know how fantasy works. I know a lot of the tropes. I know a lot of the cliches. I know how the genre works. And while a lot of people would say, well, shouldn't you push out of your comfort zone every now and again? Yeah, you should. Absolutely. But I also enjoy my comfort zone. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it in a way that is still something I can hold on to. Like my current story, I'm not someone who writes violence a lot. I don't write a lot of that sort of thing. Well, this story is violent. It is a lot of things I don't normally write. But I'm keeping it just within my comfort zone of being vampires so that while I push, I can still feel like I'm making progress towards something. And for me, that's a big deal. Because if I write completely out of my comfort zone and I don't understand how any of it's supposed to work, I'm going to get frustrated and I'm going to want to stop writing it. And I'm just not going to be happy doing it. And if I'm not happy writing, then what is the point of me writing? Fantasy romance. Inevitably, unless I intend to continue the story into multiple books, which while I do intend a lot of series, the story always finishes up and it moves on to another part. Fantasy and romance generally has a happy end. And that's all I really want from a story. There is enough bad things going on and sad people in the world that I don't need that in my escapism. If I write in fantasy and romance, I can make it have a happy ending. Things can work out. Is it completely happy? Probably not. Especially if I'm going to continue a certain character story because, hey, they need to continue to grow. But if it's a standalone or the story stops with that character and I'm moving on to another character in the next book, I can give them the happy ending that I think they should have. I'm one of those people that just really enjoys happy endings. And while it doesn't have to be completely happy because, you know, someone's hurt or, you know, you still have to deal with the things that happened in the story, I don't have to make it this tragic mess because that's not my thing. And I'm the writer. I get to decide how that ends. And the final reason I write fantasy romance, that joint genre, I'm not really sure if there is an actual joint genre of that. Is that a thing? Does fantasy have a subgenre of romance or romance have a subgenre of fantasy? Like, is that a thing? But I write those because I have noticed that those two genres are more accepting of character-focused stories. I like to really get into how characters feel and think and really focus on them more than necessarily the overarching plot, because I'm really big on just characters and how they interact with people and themselves and fantasy and romance tend to just be an easier way of doing that. I've actually read very few fiction books that I've been forced to read are character driven. They're very specifically plot driven, and it seems like it lacks something to me. I like feeling that the characters are there in a way. Now, I will admit, mystery or cozy mysteries tend to also be character driven. So at some point I might dabble into that, but there will probably still, again, be an element of fantasy or something like that in there. But that's really, those are the reasons I write fantasy and romance. Are they necessarily the best reasons? Probably not. But hey, it's my reasons. So tell me, what kind of genres do you write in? Is there a reason why you write in those genres? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!